Door. Aha, perfect.
So, did you pick cards for me?
Pick what? No, they really got gone. The only one that they talked about was that accounting firm over there. Get them back. Dan, all of them grabbed a bunch of them. I took 15 extras, but they didn't give last year at all. So I don't want to burden you with that.
I got a call from Dana Russell.
Really?
Big pay.
Did you send him a check?
No, I did.
He took about 8 or 9. You ready, Danny? Okay, we'd like to take a moment to call this meeting to order. This is a call meeting that we're going to be discussing the city's plan to opt out of Bill HB 581, and it's concerning a state bill that came down that we feel like is not a good bill, honestly. And we are finding out that every city in Walton County is going to opt out of it, as is the county, as is both the school systems. So just for info. And Danny Roberts here has been studying this thing. We've all been to meetings to discuss it with tax assessors and all those kinds of folks. And we think this is the best thing for the city. So with that, I'd like to call the meeting to order. And Danny, would you like to start? Welcome.
Ann Huntsinger said she couldn't make it. She had a work event, and Lisa said she may be a few minutes late. Traffic.
Yeah.
Traffic.
She works in Gwinnett.
Okay, evening, Mayor and Council. So thank you for coming. So this is the intent to opt out. Nothing is set in stone until next Thursday. Y'all will take formal action after the third public hearing at the council meeting. So this is one of 3 public hearings that we're required to have by state law. Kyle, can you start the slideshow for me? Council, you have a packet in front of you. It would be the same slideshow as you see here. But just to go through it, this is some of the state law, the facts, a lot of misinformation out there. A lot of people don't understand it. It took a great deal for me to understand it. Still have to ask questions. Anytime you deal with tax, it's a very complicated system. So I'm just going to go through some of the facts here. First slide, go. You may have to blow that up. So what this bill does, it places a cap on the homestead values. So not everybody has homestead property. If you do have homestead, what this law does is caps the value, where any tax assessor office would put a maximum of 3%, but it's based on the CPI. So I will tell you, for this current year, for those that opt in, there is no increase for this year. The state of Georgia has already released that. There is 0 increase this year. So it puts a 3%, and that's done from year to year, where in the past, it's based on your values of your house. Your house goes up, values go up, house goes down, values go down. It's all done by tax assessor. Your local tax assessor, the one works for tax commissioner, who's an elected official. So what this bill also does is takes the power from local jurisdiction and puts it in the hands of the state. That's one of our concerns. Property values. Next one is the CPI, like I said, maximum of 3%. They also said that they know that if this does happen, cities, counties, school systems are going to lose revenue. Just a fact. So they allowed what's called a FLOST, a floating local option sales tax, similar to SPLOST or similar to LOST. And what that does is another 1% sales tax that cities and the counties can elect to do, as long as the voters voted in, to offset what they know they're going to take away from cities by having a cap on your homestead properties. If one entity opts out, nobody can get it. It's all or none. So Walton County, they have to opt out of this program because their homestead is greater than the current one. So automatically, Walton County opts out, negates it for all the cities. If we wanted to opt in, we still would not be allowed to do the floss because Walton County has opted out, because they have to by law. So automatically would not be eligible for floss. If we were eligible, it would have to go for the referendum, the voters would have to vote on it, and then it would be, the dividends would be divided by what's called an I.G.A., an intergovernmental agreement between the cities and the county, similar to SPLOST and similar to LOST. For those that don't know, LOST is local option sales tax. It is a bill to offset property taxes that we currently have. That's where the 7% comes in if you live in Walton County versus Gwinnett County. Gwinnett does not have LOST, so they are a 6% sales tax, where in Walton County, you're a 7-cent sales tax. For those that don't know that, that's the reason why. So this would add another sales tax to make us 8% if it was passed, but we all know we tried T-SPLOST last couple of years. It did not pass. It failed miserably. So we know even if it was, it would probably not pass. But since Walton County's opting out, we would still not be allowed to opt in because they legally have to opt out. Since Loganville sits in 2 counties, it does it for both counties. So for those on the Gwinnett side, we don't know what Gwinnett's going to do, but we've had a meeting with some of the cities in Gwinnett. And last meeting I had with the Gwinnett Municipal Association, it was about half of the cities were opting in, half were opting out. They're in a process that we are. Nobody has, to my knowledge, has voted this in yet. They're just having public hearings. The law states that we have to advertise intent to opt out. So when you saw the paper, that is the verbatim what the law says we have to advertise. So legally, we have to put that in the paper. Next slide, Cal. So this is the law. We have to have 3 public hearings. Anytime you raise taxes, you have to have 3 public hearings before the city council votes on a tax increase. So they put this in the bill that if you opt out, you have to have 3 public hearings, you have to advertise it, you have to put it on the website, and it has to all be turned in to the Secretary of State by March 1st to opt out. If you do not opt out, you're automatically locked in forever. You cannot change it after March 1st. That's another thing we didn't like. We didn't like being forced. I personally, and I think what the council would say, they like to keep the power to affect taxes in their hands. That's what they're elected for, not the state of Georgia. So March 1st is the deadline. If the city council decides to opt out, then we have to submit all this, and we have to show proof where it was ran in the Walton County Tribune. We had to show proof it's on our website, which you all see it, and then we had to show proof that we had these 3 public hearings. And this is a public hearing, so after I get done talking, you're all more than welcome to come up here and speak. You just have to give your name and your address for the minutes. Next slide. So I put this in here so everyone can see that this is not a Danny Roberts made up. This is actually from the Georgia Municipal Association and the O.C.G.A, which is the county version of the Georgia Municipal Association. This tells you things for people to consider for local governments. It's the pros and cons. So you can see directly from the experts that put this together, this tax does not disappear. You know, if we opt out, we're not taking, you know, we're not doing away with currently what we have. If we opt out, everything will stay currently as it is, has been for decades. So the city of Loganville is heavily driven on property taxes. 50% of our revenue comes from property taxes. So you can imagine if you affect that a little bit, it affects the budget greatly. And what this does is if we opt in, it shifts the burden to rental properties into commercial properties. And people said, oh, that's baloney. There it is in black and white from the experts. And I'm going to explain that to you. Commercial properties, rental properties, non-homestead properties, agriculture, anything non-homestead, their assessments are continued to be as they always have been. But if we opt out, or opt in, I should say, and we have to change the millage rate to go higher to make some more revenue, they're going to get hit with a higher valuation plus a higher millage rate. So that's why that little clause is in there, because you're shifting more to them. 70% of our budget is residential. That's huge. I'm going to show you a slide in a minute that shows that. We are a bedroom community. We have more residential than any other city in Walton County. A lot of people didn't know that. Next slide, go. So this is, you know, the millage rate and the valuation of your home is all what makes your property tax bill. And I'll put this slide in here so you can see that what this does is the first year it doesn't affect us too much. Second year it really doesn't affect us, the cap. But years 3, 4, 5, it compounds. It really, because your home value stays the same. Nothing goes up, or it could go up 3%. But our cost of services continually to climb like everybody else's costs for your home continues to climb. Difference is our biggest revenue source would be capped. So what that does, it puts more pressure, second paragraph, on the millage rate. Millage rate is what's considered what we tax you on. When we move that millage rate up, it technically could be a tax increase, which means we're having 3 more public hearings. The law states that from one budget to the next, if I go up on the recessed value a certain amount, then I have to have a tax increase hearing. And since 2018, we have reduced that millage rate every single year, reduced it, because your home value went up. When your home value goes up, your millage rate has to go down, or you have to hold a tax increase. Some counties and cities don't, that's called the rollback rate, don't adopt that. So they legally have to do a tax increase. Even though that number didn't change, they're producing more revenue from year to year. Since 2018, we have always reduced the millage rate. Your millage rate now is less than it was in the 90s. It's at 9 mills now. It's a little over 9 mills. So that's big. That's huge. And then this last paragraph scared me because it says here that it could exceed 20 mills in the long term. 20 mills is a lot of money. But some cities could go that to make their revenue. Some cities don't have the luxuries of having enterprise funds to offset their costs. We're one of them. We don't have we don't have electricity or gas, and what that is cities can transfer what's called a transfer from those business accounts to the general fund to offset property taxes. We don't have that. We do have sanitation we transfer, and that's about $400,000 a year. That's not much. That's not a lot of money. So I'll just put this slide in here so everybody can see this is not something that we made up. This is something that the Counties Association and the Cities Association for the state of Georgia put in there. Next slide, go. So floss, we're back to floss again. It talks about the schools are not eligible for floss because they're a different tax entity. Whatever we do here, if you're not paying school tax, whatever we do here doesn't affect your school tax. Just want to make sure everybody understands that. If you don't pay school tax now, whatever they decide, it still won't affect it. So just know that. This talks about the I.G.A. and stuff I've already talked about and the percentage of where the money gets split. But it doesn't matter because it's not going to happen because the county's already opted out or is intent to opt it out. All right, next slide. This is where it gets into the actual numbers here. So Loganville's initial cost, what we have estimated from the Walton County Tax Assessor, would cost us $89,000 the first year by having a cap. So he figured actually 3%, but since the state of Georgia, Simpson has put 0%, that number would be actually larger. Hey. Again, you see the tax burden would shift to the commercial properties, including rental properties, because they're not, rental properties are considered commercial properties, so they're not given a homestead exemption. Also, a cap, city councils of the future will be placed in a precarious position of raising the millage rate. That is, it's not a scare tactic, that's a fact. I've been doing this for 8 years now, and that's a fact. If you mess with revenue, you're going to mess with that millage rate. Or we're going to cut services. That's not a scare tactic, that's actual black and white. I got numbers to back that up as well. So you can imagine 20 years, if you're locked in, 20 years from now, and you're paying the same taxes on 2024 as you are in 2044. I can promise you, well, I can't promise you, but I would imagine that cost of living is going to be more 20 years from now But if we're still making the same thing on 2024 numbers, you don't have to be a scientist to understand math. That doesn't equate. So like I said, you know, opting in is a decision that permanently decides everything. If we opt in, unless the state changes the law, there's nothing y'all can do if you wanted to. 2 years, maybe, like, dang, we should have opted out. Too late, unless the state law changes. Next slide. Can you zoom in, Kyle? These are actually real numbers. These are the actual numbers from the digest from 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024 for Walton County only. This is not including Gwinnett. I did not get anything from Gwinnett tax assessor. So these are the fair homestead values, and that's in the 304 million. Okay, that's your 40% value that we tax on. As you can see, in 2022, 237 million of that was homestead values. 48% of that is the digest. So if you don't understand what a digest is, that net digest, that's every tax parcel in the city limits of Loganville. It's $493 million. 237 of that is exclusively homestead properties. So when you affect that number, you affect the bottom number of the revenue for the city of Loganville. 48.1%. 2023, it was 52.1%. 2024, it's 47.5%. So when I say you mess with that number, it's going to mess with your overall budget. There ain't no ways to talk about it. Either you're going to raise taxes, you're going to raise your millage rate to make up that revenue, or you're going to cut services. Plain and simple.
Okay, these numbers on the screen right now are Loganville's numbers.
That's the city of
as
Loganville's
determined
numbers.
by the tax
Yes.
department.
So as you can see, if we had a 3% cap, and what this reflects is if this went into law in 2021, and it was a 3% max cap every year, scroll down, Kyle, versus what we've collected versus what the state law would do to us, we would lose $409,000 in year 2022, $982,000 in year 23, and we would lose $919,000 in year 24. That is a total of $2,311,000 of a $16 million budget. Half of that comes from property taxes. So that's the dire situation. So I know the city council. So what I did was I cut every single thing out of the city budget. Fuel, maintenance, computer supplies, ammo for the police officers, everything. And I can only cut 1.7 million. The cuts will come from personnel. So if something bad happened, I'm gonna come to them and say, which department should we get rid of? And that's a decision we will have to make. That is the gravity of this situation. Not saying it's gonna happen, but I'm saying that's what could happen. Next slide. Now, we are not foolish to know that citizens will be upset because they passed this bill by huge measures, 67%, I think, in Walton County. But a lot of people didn't understand what they were voting on. I see it on social media. I see people say, well, they better vote against this because I voted no. Well, if you voted no, you should be for this. I voted against it because I know what it's going to do to local governments. But it was approved by the voters. So the council, in our last meeting that we had, we briefly talked about this. They asked, we're the only city that currently gives a homestead. No other city in Walton County gives homesteads. We do. We give a $2,000 homestead credit. They asked if we double it. So we went to $5,000. So right now we have a roughly 2,723 homestead properties in the city of Loganville. That's including Gwinnett. That costs us about $51,000 a year that we don't get in revenue. So the council said, well, let's look about doing a $5,000. Now what that takes is local legislation at the state to change our homestead because they have to change it. You all would instruct Paul to say, Paul, write a resolution and ask the local legislation at the state level to change your 2,000 to 5,000. That's what it would basically cost at the current millage rate. That cost ebbs and flows with the millage rate because it's multiplied by the current millage rate. So based off of the current millage rate for this year, you're looking at almost $130,000 to the city's current budget. And that gives them $5,000 off their property. No other city does that. I know City of Monroe is talking about it because he and I have been talking a lot about this. I believe they have intent to do 5,000 as well. But our 5,000 is more than anybody because we got more residential property than any other city in Walton County. So these amounts can be changed at future councils. Y'all can go up, you can go down. That would be something I would imagine Paul would put in the resolution if y'all direct him to do that. It gives you the right, called the home rule, to change your exemptions. This was put in place in 1975. We found the minutes in December of 75 where I don't think they went to the state. I think they just, I think Junior Hall was the mayor, and I think they just did it. And it's been in place ever since. We were amazed to find the minutes, actually, to tell you the truth, the signed copy of the minutes as well. But I cannot find anywhere where we did a resolution to the state of Georgia. So just talking with Paul, more than likely we would have to do a resolution to the state and ask them to change it, which shouldn't be an issue, but it probably wouldn't take effect until next year. I think we're too close to make anything affect this year.
One problem with that, though, that I see, if we're currently working like the Dickens to meet the revenues versus the expenses, if we do this, it's very possible we'll have to raise the millage rate to make up that $90,000 or $80,000.
120,000 is a lot better than finding $2 million. I'll say that.
But we've already cut and cut and cut too.
Yeah, but I think you got to do something because they voted heavily for this. I think you got to show something. I think 5,000 is a good alternative. Like I said, if we do it and something happens drastically, we could always change it. But I think 5,000 is a good start. It's a number we can predict because we can't predict if they're going to go 2%, 3%, no percent. We can't predict that, but I can predict what our millage rate is because y'all set that. And then I can just do the simple math, multiplying it by homesteads versus the millage rate, and I know what that's going to cost us. But 129,000 is more manageable than 900,000. I will tell you that.
Just so you're going to find the money.
There's no finding money. There is budgeting money, and I'll talk briefly on that. So all the revenue that we have, I'll tell you the top 3 revenue producers for the city of Loganville. Property tax is $8 million, a little over $8 million. Personal property, that's all governed by millage rate. Your ad valorem tax, that's all governed by your millage rate. Those we can control because we can move the millage rate. I can't control if you go in the store and buy stuff for lost. That is what it is. We took a 5% loss 2 years ago with the county. They got 5%, we gave up 5% in order to get that bill passed through the county. That was about a $300,000 loss to our budget. Next one is insurance premiums. That's about $1 million. I can't control that. That's insurance money. And the rest are things that I cannot control, like beer license, occupational tax. Those we can't control. They are what they produce what they produce. Fines and forfeiture. I can't control those. What I can control are these things here, and that's what worries me. If you cap these, you're handicapping the city. This is not about today. This is about 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Like I told you before, we have to look at this as a business because it is a business. We are used to having the services that we have here, your police, your fire, your limb pickups. All those are big luxury items that we have. They are. You got, 30-something police, 30-something firefighters with less than a 5-minute response time. 3 stations within 6 square miles. Go look anywhere else in the county, not knocking Gwinnett or Walton. You won't find that. You won't find 6 officers in 6 square miles, round the clock, 24/7. You won't find free limb pickup, chipping. Those are things that this budget pays for. Those are things that could be affected. I'll keep going before I get on soapbox. I do have this other jurisdiction just to show. This is not Danny's information. This came from Walton County. Next slide, Kyle. One of the yellow highlights. So this is what was given to us when we had a meeting with Walton County. So talk about long-term impact. Well, we can look at Walton County's long-term impact because this bill for them went in effect 2003. Currently, right now, the lost revenue that they're not collecting because they have homestead freeze is $13,737,000 that they are not collecting as of today, that they could be collecting if they didn't have a freeze in place. People are paying taxes from 2003. We all know what everybody's property values went up. Land cost, house, everything. But they're locked in. That equates to 2.89 mills. So if Walton County didn't have this in place, they could reduce their millage rate from 10.413 to 2.89. That would be a win for all people in Walton County, commercial and residential and agriculture and all the other taxing parcels they have.
Yeah, they could reduce it to 7.523.
Yes,
Yeah.
but they reduced it by 2.89 mils. That is pretty significant. That's what this bill does down the road. It says, GMA says it, O.C.G.A says it. It's not going to be an immediate effect. It's going to be long-term effect. This is now Danny speaking. This is a knee-jerk reaction from the state to try to lower the rising costs of homes. But in the city of Loganville, when that is called the reassessed value on the digest that we see, it tells me on a citywide what that went up. That's what we have reduced your millage rate by every single year. So I looked at 4 tax parcels today. Melanie, yours is one of them because we talked. And from 2002 to now, it was roughly $40 to $50. It went up. 2013 or 2023 is an odd year because we had the HRG credit that the state gave, a $20,000, and y'all didn't pay that. So what happened is the state did a grant and they paid all the taxing authorities that money that they lost. Ours was about 500,000. I'm sorry. A little over 400,000. So that's an anomaly. You really can't look at that because that was a one-time deal. But you look at 22 digest and the 2024 digest, and it's only went up about $40 because we reduced your millage rate. Now, I explain this. Some people say, well, Danny, my tax bill went up, and you're saying you reduced taxes. That's correct. You got to remember, I look at the digest as a whole city, not individual property. So one property may went up 10%, another property may go up 0%, but citywide it went up X%. And whatever that is, that's what I legally have to reduce the millage rate to keep the same revenue, or we have to have 3 public hearings to say, hey, we're raising your taxes. Even though we may not move your numbers, we're producing more revenue from one year to the next. So every single year, we have reduced the millage rate since 2018. So, but some people may pay more because their house value may went up more than your neighbors. They're supposed to evaluate the whole county every 3 years, so a third of the county every year and hit it in 3 years. That's what the law says. We don't know how they assess value. We don't do assess value. That's Walton County for the Walton side, and it's Gwinnett County for the Gwinnett side. If you think your home value is too much, appeal it. You have that right. There is a law and a formula you have to follow. Just go to the tax assessor's website and look what that is. Trust me, people appeal it all the time because we're steady writing checks back to the property owners for when they appeal. So that's just a fact. So if you think you're paying too much, challenge it. But you have to challenge it with assessors, not with the city, because we don't assess property. We just get the numbers from them and we put our millage rate and it tells us what your bill is. I know that's a lot of information over a lot, and I'll open it up for the mayor and council first for questions, and then we'll open it up for the public.
Well, it was a lot of information, but it's certainly a lot more information than what was on the referendum. So this is where we at today. Have any questions? Any other questions? Anybody?
I got a thing.
Well, you'll have 2 more times to hear this. Our next public hearing will be February the 10th, which is next Monday, and that'll be right before the work session. And the next one will be February the 13th, which will be before the council meeting, both at 6 p.m. in here. And then they will take action on the council meeting on the 13th. They will vote one way or the other. I'll open it up to if you want to speak or ask questions, please come to the microphone, because we got people on YouTube watching. They need to hear, so I'll open the floor up.
Lee, we need your name and address, please.
My name is Lee Phillips. I live at 4421 Pecan Street with my mother, who is 85. I am disabled. So I'm going to keep it real simple because I'm a simple man trying to live a simple life in a complicated world. So, as for us, we have an exemption that saves us money. We are both on limited income. So if we lose that, basically that means we've got to find extra money out of our pocket to pay the higher taxes. If we don't vote on it and we get to keep it, we still lose money because taxes are going to go up. So the homeowners get the shaft either way. And that's just keeping it plain and simple.
Well, there's one thing, Lee, I would add to that. The homeowners also get services like police protection, fire protection, and all the other things. So make your comments on that too, if you would, because it's just expenses that have to be paid.
I agree with that, but most of our streets have existed in this town with the same pickup on these streets, I know, since the early 70s when we've lived here. Now, yes, we have inflation and things go up, but the citizens who have lived in these established neighborhoods should not bear the cost of the new neighborhoods that come in that put extra burdens on the city services.
Well, I'll answer that. So if we opt out, nothing changes. You're not going to lose no exemptions. That stays the same. So there's nothing being lost if you opt out. And I will say this, I will argue that point. If you didn't have extra neighborhoods coming in, you'd be paying higher taxes.
Yep.
Because I can show you the new growth number, which is not affected by the millage rate. Reassessed value, I have to roll back. New growth, I do not have to count that against it. New growth is what made us like it, hate it, whatever you want to be here. I've been here all my life, born and raised here. I know, trust me. Some of y'all lived in subdivisions, was woods when I was here. You're preaching to the choir. But that new growth was got us where we are now. I promise you that. You can look at any digest and you can see the new growth. It's in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So, love it, hate it, that's just a fact.
Good answer.
But if they vote to opt out, nothing changes. If they opt in, nothing changes with your current exemptions. That's what's being thrown around like, oh, we're going to lose something. You're not losing nothing. You're actually gaining $3,000 in exemption if the council approves it for homestead properties. If you don't have homestead, it doesn't affect you. You would not get that. If you have a rental property, you can't apply for homestead. It's only for your primary domicile. You have to own it.
Danny, I was just going to highlight, just to make sure, clarify, this does not affect any of what we call senior exemptions for your school board taxes, right? So the majority of the savings that folks realize as they age comes from the exemption for their school board taxes. This does not affect that in any way. It only affects the city component of your tax bill, or go talk to the commissioners, the county component of theirs. Doesn't affect any of the senior exemptions, I think, that he was discussing. None of those go away. None of that changes. It only affects the freeze on your homestead value for the city component of your ad valorem taxes.
Danny, can I make a comment? I think the state already realizes this is a flawed bill, and they're already talking about making changes to it. And what scares me is if we do go into the program, they could rewrite that, change it, add things to it, and we're bound to that. And that it could be detrimental to the citizens, because we don't know. It's kind of like the Nancy Pelosi, you got to vote it in to see what's in it. They want us to vote it in, to accept it, and then they're gonna modify it, and we don't know how they're gonna modify it, and how that's, could be detrimental to us as
Right, because
homeowners.
if you don't like something, you're not gonna go to the Capitol and,
No,
but you can call
you can come here and-
any one of
and
them
talk
and
to
say,
any of
y'all need to
us,
do
yeah.
something. So that's, that's a big issue that we all discussed last meeting, our last council meeting, was taking the control out of your hand and putting it in the line of Georgia. And that's what this does. So,
And just pulling up on my phone, the CPI the last 4 years was 4.12, 8%, and 4.7. So you still get that 3% increase every year if the state doesn't cut it like they did the first year. So even though if you're homesteaded, your values are still gonna, well, the values will be capped, the percentage will go up, correct?
yes, if you opt in, this has a 3% cap. That's the maximum it can go based
It'll
on
still
the.
go up.
It could still go up if the, not Department of Revenue, but Secretary of State, right? Secretary of State, that's who decides. So that's in the law, yep. And I will mention this because the bill doesn't really address it that I could find. If you have a recession, let's say your property value goes down 50%. And the next year it goes up 50%. Well, it could go up 50% because it doesn't say it. It only triggers 3% cap once you get to the 2024 numbers. So the 2024, wherever your value is right now, would be the magic number forever. So if it goes down, and then the next year it goes up 30%, but still below that 2024 numbers, it could go up 30%. I don't see that in the bill, but I did have an attorney for the GMA put that in writing. That's the way he understands it, so you can take that with a grain of salt too, but it's not in the bill that we could find, that I could find, where it addresses it.
And I know,
Yeah, come up here, please.
Okay, I'm Joanne Burns, Holy Shields View. Okay, so I'm hearing everything that you're saying, and it's making sense to me, and I'm with you, but here's what keeps going through my mind. Isn't every other city jurisdiction being put in the same predicament? And then if so, why did they think this was a good thing? I'm trying to understand the flip side of it.
I asked the question with, when I was on a meeting with the Gwinnett County Municipal Association. There's 17 cities in Gwinnett County, and I asked the question, why did GMA support this when it seems like, well, all the cities in Walton are advertising to opt out? I have no idea what they're going to do. They're advertising just like we are to opt out. And what I was told was, well, it was the best of, it was the lesser of all the evils that could happen. So that's why we supported it. That was the exact words he gave me. I said, well, that really didn't answer my question. So he said, well, the state was bound to do something in place, and this is what we thought was the best of all the stuff that could be. So that's why GMA supported it. That was the answer I got. Because they were bound to do something. Because I don't want to speculate, but if I had to speculate, I would say that values of 2020 have astronomically went up. They thought, well, we better do something to get voted in. I mean, I hate to say it that way. As a voter, that's what I'm going to say, not as a city manager, but as a voter, I'm going to do something to make myself look good, and we'll let the local municipalities and local jurisdictions worry about the mess.
we
Yeah,
have to, we have
I'll-
to eat it, not them.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit to that also. The new law is a two-part law. It is the freeze or the homestead exemption, but it is also the addition of the FLOST, the floating local option sales tax. So I guess to further answer the question, the logic was we're going to freeze taxes in a way that help the homeowners, but offer the local municipalities and counties an opportunity to pass an additional 1% sales tax. The problem with that is twofold. One is the law is written such that if any jurisdiction in our county opts out, so it's not even up to y'all, if anyone. So if, let's say, Walnut Grove opted out, but nobody else opted out, everybody else opted in, you are prohibited from passing the FLOST. So the idea at the legislature was we're going to create a two-part law. The first part of the law addresses sort of a tax savings, a tax reduction element, and then the second part of the law addresses a tax revenue increasing component. but we can't ever get, even if we wanted to, or even if we could, you can't because the law prohibits it, because there is an expectation that at a minimum, one jurisdiction is going to opt out. And I think Social Circle already has or is the first, or will be the first. The other problem is that even to get to the floss, you then have to pass a referendum at your next election cycle. And what Danny just highlighted for you, generally Walton County struggles on passing any additional sales taxes other than the standard SPLOST. There's been no other sales tax referendum that's passed in Walton County except for what I call the standard SPLOST that almost, or actually today, I think every one of the 159 counties in the state has.
The only thing with the floss is that, y'all may not realize this, at least it's my interpretation, it is required by law to go to reduce property taxes, correct?
Yeah, it has to be listed just like loss does. It has to be listed to offset the property tax, which means you just say it's going in the general fund to offset property tax. But
Right,
yes,
so I mean,
it's
to
just like
me,
lost.
it
but-
might be easier to get that passed as opposed to splosh, which goes to various things that some of the taxpayers don't see and that kind of stuff. But that's just one
Right.
little caveat on that floss, but we can't do it anyway because
Yeah.
of Walton County.
But you know, this is my argument with, and I love Walton County, so if they're listening, don't take this offensively, but Loganville Monroe produces most of the lost. We do, because we have most of the retail. But the county gets 70% of that. The city, all the cities get 30%. So you can imagine if everybody opted in and now we gotta come to agreement with 7 entities about who gets what, it's gonna be contentious. I will tell you, it's contentious and lost. We came to the 11th hour of not getting it passed, which countywide, that's $20 million a year. That's a lot of money to give up. So, you know, but it doesn't matter. It's a moot point because
Precisely.
it's done. But, you know, this is one of those bills, politicians, no offense to anybody that's a politician here, but we're going to give you a tax break here, but we're going to charge you more taxes here. That's all this was. It's a lot of hands. So, at
But the
least,
ballot looked a little different
yeah,
than
I mean,
that.
people saw the ballot and was like, homestead exemption, heck yeah, I'll vote for that. But they didn't see, well, the cities can enter in agreement, floss, charge you another 1% at the grocery store or the gas station or wherever you buy your goods at. So, I can tell you, as experience from 17, or I've been here, I don't know, a long time, but 8 years as city manager, not one of these people, this one or previous council, has said, Danny, what, you should raise the millage rate. You should raise taxes. Not one of them say that. They all say the opposite. Danny, you better cut taxes. So I'll leave it in their hands. You elected them. You can curse them out. I can't, but you can. And you can tell them what you want to do, and then we'll try to make it work. But if this goes to the state, good luck calling the state capital.
Let me ask a question, and Paul, this may be for you. Oh, it is on. Oh, there. That's because I wasn't speaking into the mic. I kind of studied this law to ad nauseum for myself. I never saw anything relative to the Walton County not being able to opt in because they have a better rate now for Homestead than this would give them. And then Danny and I saw a Zoom, and I don't know that man's name, but he said he thought Walton County could opt in, that the fact that they had the better exemption now did not apply. Do you know anything about that?
As it relates to the county?
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
I do not.
It troubled me because I want us to be dealing with the facts, and I don't know enough about the Walton County issue. I do know Chairman Thompson, and I don't think he'd let it, I think he's on his toes. But I can't find anything in the law that says that.
I will tell you, if they opt in, everybody's homestead will be reset to 2024 numbers.
Yeah, everybody's.
And I can promise you, the house in 2003 is a lot cheaper than 2024. And I can't imagine the pitchforks they would get at their county steps if they
Would they
opted
be
in.
reset to 224? Because it says they have to give the best of what they've got now, which is
The
what
way I
they're
understand it
doing.
is, that's why they have to opt out, because they have to go with the most restrictive, the way I understand it. And right now, there's fixed 2003 numbers is more restrictive than 2024, but that's for them to figure out, but that's the way I understand it.
Yeah, I just got confused. I just didn't see anything that
But
supported
if you
what
don't
they're
have
doing.
Homestead, you should make sure you have Homestead for the county and for the city. But you can only have one Homestead in the state of Georgia.
The county team.
But the county, don't they notify, that's what I asked in the meeting. If I registered at the county, you
Well,
got
I can tell you,
notification I'm
when I
homesteading in
built
the
my
city.
house, I forgot to register because I had two houses at the time, and I forgot to move it, and I didn't catch it until 2021. They didn't
Well,
notify me about nothing.
No, but I'm saying, if you register at the county, it notifies the city automatically. They don't come to the
Oh,
city.
yes, but-
That's what I'm asking.
Right, if
So
you don't
If
register-
they're homesteaded in the county,
Right.
they're homesteaded in the
Yes,
city.
but you got to
That's what
notify
I'm
the county
asking.
you live in.
Right, but yeah, the
Like
thing
you-
that's
yes.
scary that was doing, if the county was going in, is the fact that our property values in 2003 were way down here compared
Mm-hmm.
to now, and if they were to opt in, that would be a massive increase in everybody's taxes.
See, I don't know. I don't know it. I'm just confused on all of it. And I know we're going to have to vote. And to vote, I'd like to know what I'm voting on. Good
Yes,
or
sir,
bad.
young man.
All right, I'm Donnie Clatt, we live at 208 Fair Street.
Hey, Donnie.
And I'm just looking for a simple version between the city council and the city manager, because I'm pretty good at numbers. I'm probably more confused now talking about millage rates and a $3 million loss and a $500 million gain. If y'all could take a $250,000 price tag on a house and show both scenarios, what's going to do if we opt in or we opt out, best case and worst case, that would simplify it for everybody, and you wouldn't have any kickback. They say, yes, let's opt in or let's opt out. This is the best it's going to be, and this is the worst it's going to be. But this thing's so complicated. You got to be a lawyer and a mathematician and a preacher and everything else to understand half what y'all trying to say up here. And I don't know, is that possible to put it in a, so it's not possible to simplify it?
Nobody knows those facts.
I'm just saying, if you used a $250,000 value on a house, and then the way it is now and the way it could be, there's no way to figure that out.
No, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
So, if you take a $250,000 house, I gotta have an assessed value. So we can make up a value, but I don't know if the county's gonna assess your home value. It could be nothing, or it could be 20%. If it's 20%, I can tell you it's gonna be worse than a 3% cap. Or it could be no percent. There's some properties that don't get reassessed at all until the next year. So it's hard to say. I can show you what it looks like based on 2023 numbers, which that's what that was. Go back that slide.
Because we don't know the rollback until the
Right there.
county tells us either, so we couldn't guesstimate what the rollback would be.
You zoom in.
Every year until the county tells us. Yeah, both counties.
So you see in 2022, it went up 22% versus a 3%. So that would have been bad if you didn't have a cap. But we reduced the millage rate. So that takes into account too. If they don't reduce the millage rate, which they did, but you know, they say they don't. But that's what it actually cost us in real numbers. If we had a 3% cap, we would have lost $409,000 out of the city budget based on 2022. 2023, the digest went up $27,000 on reassessed value. If there was a 3% cap, it only went up a small portion. Of that, we would have lost 97 million or 982,000.
All right.
So I can tell you that a cap is better for the homeowner, but it's worse for the city because that's our revenue. I mean, if your property value never went up, then what's going to happen? They're going to increase your millage rate. So you're going to be paying regardless. So you're going to be paying a $100,000 house at 10 mills would be X. Well, they said, well, we need more money, so we're going to now make that $100,000 house. Now we're going to charge you 15 mills. Because at the end of the day, I got to have money to operate the city. So what I'm saying is keep it the same. We have been blessed with growth. We've been blessed with commercial coming in. They're not eligible for, reassess caps. So that's what's gotten us where we are, because just like y'all, our cost of business in the city has went up 20-30% in some cases. Personnel costs alone has went up. Insurance costs this year went up 20%. That's in the millions. So Either we have the money or we cut services. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but it's literally that simple. But to tell you on a $250,000 house, there's too many variables. But I will say the 3% is better than the 20%. But about 20%, we reduce your millage rate. You know, the millage rate there was 10.81. Then it went to 10.085. Then now it's at 9.869. You see it reducing because the reassessed value went up, so we had to reduce the millage rate. Now, when values go down, that millage rate should go back up. But guess what? City council doesn't like that because they say, well, Danny, that's a tax increase. No, it's not. A tax increase is only when I produce more money in the bank account, not a number on a piece of paper. But in parents, well, you went from 9 mills to 10 mills, they think that's a tax increase. That's what got us in trouble in 2010 to 2018 because the millage rate is made to ebb and flow. When values go up, it goes down. When values go down, the millage rate goes up. But all we did in the city of Loganville was go down, go down, go down, go down until we said, all right, we're going to fire somebody or you're going to have to raise taxes. 2018, we raised taxes. We went to 12 mills. My first year as city manager, crazy. We went up and then we started coming back down. So I know that wasn't what you're looking for, but that's just the best way I can explain it.
I'm Richard Jenkins. I live at 246 CS Floyd Road. Who in the world introduced this bill? I want to know.
Your state representative, I forget the name of the guy, there is a guy.
Where was it from?
He's from up northwest Georgia. He didn't like the school system in his county. I did a little research, but
Yeah, a lot of what I found was
His
to
name's
go
right
after
on the
school.
bill, I
board.
just don't have it. But yeah, that's a good question, and
Yeah, I mean-
make sure you don't vote for him. for sure.
Well, I mean, we can't, but we've got to keep our local guys that's up there on the stand. And somebody had to support him,
Oh.
or he wouldn't have got here.
Probably most of the Republican Party did, because it's a Republican bill.
Governor had to sign it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I believe, in my mind, I've been shaking this out for a couple of weeks, but I believe somewhere in the state, there are some entities, cities, counties, whatever, that did not drop their millage rate when their appraisals went sky high, and the people ended up paying a lot more taxes, and those people in the legislature called heck for it.
Yep.
I believe that happened. I believe it was well intended, although when you get down to the nitty gritty and look at all the stuff, it potential has a lot of faults. It really does.
I think it's hard for them to come up with a one-size-fits-all plan for all the cities and municipalities, all that in Georgia, and that's what they kind of did with the bill.
I suspect whoever introduced it is a fairly powerful senator in the state, if I was a betting person, and he had enough power to bring people with him.
That's the sponsors.
He's responsible.
But you can just Google sponsors of House Bill 581, it'll tell you.
So it made it through with no problem, went through pretty quick then, didn't it? Okay.
Yeah. And they want people to make decisions in a hurry. We got less than a month to
Yeah.
have 3 meetings and get stuff into the state.
I think it's going to be May, because the bill to extend it to May has gone out of the committee, so it's going up.
But by the time it comes
But-
out, though,
Appreciate
Like I said, we wouldn't know until,
we'll already
Yeah,
have
wait till at
somebody.
least crossover day, so.
I don't know. Good question.
Any other
Yes, sir,
questions?
you got a question on your mind?
crazy, too.
I know you do.
Hi, my name is George Nicholas. I live at 215 Melanie Lane here in Loganville. I've been a mortgage lender for 40 years in this town, in this area. I know what property taxes are all over the place. Property taxes here, it's cheaper living in Fulton County than it is here. That's just a pure and simple fact. All of this stuff that I'm seeing here, I believe it's all smoke and mirrors. I mean, the bottom line is, you know, you get something here, you give something there. I want to know Bottom line is, what does this mean? Okay, are my taxes gonna go up more? I think they are, regardless. Because if you, as I understand it, if you have a cap on the value, but you still have the millage rate, you can jack it up there. So what are you really accomplishing? Nothing. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. So I'm really confused more than ever. I'm gonna go study this some, but that's just my opinion. I don't understand.
I don't think anybody in here does. I know I don't. It's a mess. The whole thing is a mess.
Yeah, it is. Well, thank you.
Y'all should write, by the way, those of you who are into writing, or email, or however you want to contact your state representative and let them know what you think about this bill. Because power to the people. It's just that simple.
Well,
Power the people.
I was talking to one of the legislators in the House of Representatives, and the discussion came up about this bill, because we were a little frustrated with it. And he said originally, the bill was going to be passed by the state and mandated to every city, every county, and every entity, school boards in the state. And it was not liked enough that some of the senators and some of the representatives forced them to add in an opt-out part of it. So, for whatever it's worth. And the state has been known in the past to mandate some things and not worry about cities and counties paying for it. So, whatever it's worth.
Well, you know, when we had that breakfast, the senator couldn't even answer our questions, and he helped write the bill.
Imagine that.
That was really disgusting.
Yes, sir, young man.
Thank you. Bob Schambach, live at 1022 Maple Creek Drive in Loganville. I got two simple questions. I'm not a mortgage lender like my brother-in-law is, but I work for large corporations, and it comes down to what you got coming in, what you got going out. As a percent of sales or percent, whatever you want to call it, you got to keep up with it. The two things I don't see up here for us to understand is, one, how much of your revenues has the city gone up in the last 4 years, along with your costs? So I can't gauge here. I can see what the Homestead does. I can see what the 3%, how that changes, and you're going to have a deficit by doing that. You have to raise your mill. But how much year over year has your revenues gone up in the last 4 years? Where did you start in 2021 with revenues? And what was your budget?
And you're thinking mainly about property taxes.
I'm thinking just everything. Throw it all in.
We're talking about
Throw the whole, I
property
mean,
taxes.
I look at the total picture. I don't care about what, one segment or another. You're giving us the Homestead because that's what that's what they're going with. And you've shown us the difference of 3%. I get that we'd save it. And you're going to be in a deficit as everything else is the same. That's what you're saying from a revenue standpoint. But I don't see where your revenue growth, what it's happened here as a city, and what your cost and what your budget is. So that's my question.
Are you going to come to next year's budget meetings for us?
Sure.
All right.
That's a good question to ask.
Maybe the only one here.
Typically, our revenue exceeds our expenditures. Some years are different, but it's usually around 8 to 10%, I would say, on a given year. Yeah, we have not spent more than we've collected in general fund. The new growth has saved us, but we have a balanced budget. By law, we have to present a balanced budget at the beginning of the year. We don't have to finish with one, but we have to start with one. So, we do our expense and then we make sure our revenue balances it. But then at the end of the year, I don't like to spend more than I make, I can tell you that. So, but yeah, come next meeting, or is the auditor gonna be here? So we'll have our audit come Thursday, so please come and listen to the auditor. She's gonna tell you. But I can tell you this audit, we ended positive. You know how much it was? Yeah, so. But we ended positive, so, which is good. I don't think I'd be kept around if we were negative. So.
Yeah. Good comment. It all does boil down to what you got coming in and what you got going out.
Name of the game.
And if you don't have enough coming in,
And
and you
I-
got to cut what's going out, and it may be jobs, that may be services, who knows? But one thing that's real interesting to me is the city the county, the state, all have to have a balanced budget every year. There is no exceptions and there's no excuses, but our country don't. Interesting, isn't it? Anyway, that's a little bit higher up in the clouds, but maybe that's the reason we owe $36 trillion.
Probably.
And I believe we all understand the plight that, about the prices going up and all that. And that's why at our last meeting, we discussed increasing the 2,000 to a certain amount, trying to keep it in line with something county-wide. So if going from a $2,000 homestead to a $5,000 homestead is a decent amount for us to give up to, so we can have more control over, like Danny was saying earlier in the meeting. I don't want to overlook that, because I believe we are understanding relief is needed. Just more of a relief that is more controlled locally, and that would be a way to do it right there. But we are the only city currently that does offer a homestead at 2,000, so at least we do have that. But we are looking about increasing it as well. But we have to get kind of through this before we can get to that step, because they put a deadline on us for this. Now, they might extend the deadline from what I hear, but we don't want to take the chance and then miss the deadline either, and then have to automatically opt in. So,
Any other questions? Huh? Yes, ma'am. Only because we got a mic.
Did you do a better job of giving your address this time?
I'm just thinking about what that gentleman said about overall revenue and whatnot. Is it possible, is there a scenario to have the best of both worlds? That if we put the cap, and with all the new growth that's coming, PUVs, townhomes, high density, is it possible to have the best of both worlds? That you still have to operate and our property taxes are capped?
I would think hypothetically it could be.
I mean, hypothetically, yeah, because if we losing revenue, I would just tell them to raise the millage rate. I mean, it goes back to his point. We can cap it, but then I'm gonna turn around and, at the end of the day, basically this is the way it works. Department heads submit a budget. Danny, I need $16 million. Mine and Natalie's job is to go find $16 million in revenue. There's only so many revenues I can actually control. Revenue is $8,500,000 of a $16 million budget. The financials are online, y'all. Every council meeting is in the packet. You can look at them. Revenue, expenditures. Yes, to answer your question, yes, you could. But where that gets detrimental is in down the road when you're raising millage rate to offset, because most of our revenue comes from residential property. So when you put a cap on it,
I'm just saying,
yeah.
thinking about all the projects that are coming, and just wondering, is it possible?
Sure, anything's possible, but I don't know what that.
Realistically possible.
Yeah.
Like, could it happen?
Yes.
Well, and
But-
supposedly the growth brings in revenue.
But what
And
you're
we got a lot of growth.
Keep in
missing
mind,
it is,
Yeah, but look at the expense that you have to pay out with all that growth, your infrastructure, your more police, more fire.
Exactly,
There's
but
more
that's
expenses.
not what's being touted.
No, I'm with you. So-
but as Danny said earlier, the reason this council has been able to roll back the millage rate for the last 4 years is because
That's-
that new
the whole point we're
provided some
missing
money
is
that we wouldn't have had.
we know assessments have went up. We addressed that by reducing your millage rate. We're not up here, we're going up 22%, but we're going to keep the same millage rate. We're not doing that. Right. So that is, so you can say we are doing what the cap is intended to do by reducing your millage rate. If we didn't reduce your millage rate, then you would have every argument in the world to say, you're raising my value plus you're raising my millage rate. We're not. There's a 5-year digest on the city's website. You can look at the last 5 years. It'll tell you I have to advertise that. Every single year it has went down because that reassessed value went up.
Right, I feel
So-
like a lot of this is like, you guys are expected to look into the future and know what things are gonna look like about it. So it's, I'm just
Yes.
thinking about Loganville, and I'm thinking about all the stuff coming up out of Brown, PUD, all the townhomes, and I'm thinking, that's gonna bring a lot of revenue. Does that put us in a position down the line to possibly, like I said, to have the best of both worlds?
Yeah, the more growth you get, the more hopefully your millage rate will go down because you do have that new growth. That's another reason our millage rate, and we're able to do more things, we spent $600,000 on paving last year, the first time we've ever done it since I've been employed in the city. We only spend usually 100,000, no, not even 100,000, 30,000. We just get a grant and we put in our 25% match. But Mayor 2 years ago, he said, I want to spend $500,000 every single year. We've had the funds to do that because we've had the new growth. We were able to, we had that huge pay study. That was $1.7 million. We didn't raise taxes. That was for everybody and citywide. Now, half of that was water fund, which is not included in the general fund, but your police and fire, them alone, y'all, was at what, 700,000 or 400,000? I can't remember. Maybe no, it was 400,000. It was 200,000 each. Their increase 400,000 was just for those paid for those two departments. Again, we didn't raise the millage rate because we do have that growth that we all talk about. It's a love-hate relationship. Trust me, I hate traffic as much as y'all do. But
And part of that was on those increases, our city gave 2% and 3% increases each year for 5 or 6 or 7 years. And then we open our eyes one day and find out that we pay less than any other entity around us.
2%.
So what do? You either lose employees or you pay them what they're worth. That's what we did.
So, yeah, I mean, it's, but to answer your question, we have very good, healthy financials. I'm not saying we don't. I'm not trying to scare anybody saying the world's going to collapse. I'm just saying 10 years from now, I don't want to be forced into a cap. I'd rather let them control that, not somebody that doesn't live here, in the county at least. Do what?
Do you know any city or township opting in?
I was told half of the Gwinnett cities are your
I think
cities.
Covington is opting in.
Who?
Covington.
Yeah.
But they have a lot of,
Lawrenceville opted in.
Yeah, so our digest, every city's digest is a little different. There are some communities that don't rely so heavily on, like we do for single family and people who live here in Homestead. We are a bedroom community. We like it that way. I hate to say that, but we do. We do have the retail here in town as well. But I know people like to say that we are dense, but we're very less dense compared to some other places. And we actually have very low rental usage than most any other place around us. And so that plays into it as well. So places that only connect, maybe 20% of their income from homesteaded properties, it's not going to be a big loss for them.
The
Because
cities
they're
that-
collecting most of theirs off hotel, motel, and a lot of other kind of income tax and stuff like that. Or they
And
have,
enterprise funds.
or they have gas.
It's not, none of that is
stuff like
enterprise,
that.
strictly
But
enterprise.
that's
You look
But
at
yeah.
the cities that are opting in, and I guarantee they got a gas and electric enterprise fund. There's a city that's near us right now, I called yesterday, $3.6 million of a $15 million budget for general fund was from utility fees going in. That's how they offset there. We don't have that here. We are solely dependent on residential property. That's why it's detrimental to us, plain and simple. It is what it is. We're a bedroom community. We don't have industry. We got some commercial, but 70% of our budget is residential property. Of that 70%, 50% is homestead properties. You cap 50%, what are you doing? If I tell you your salary, you can no longer, on your salary, make no more than 3% forever, is that going to affect your home? You dang right it's going to affect it. You're going to have to make some decisions, right? Same way here. It's that simple. That's about as simple as I can make it.
Based on everything y'all said, and the best idea is we're getting opt-out, that's what we're hearing from everybody.
So the question is, I am intending to opt out. I have presented to them. I'm not going to speak for them. They will make that decision come next Thursday, unless they want to tell you now how they feel. But my intent is to present to opt out.
But with every one of y'all living in the city, you own a house here, personally, would you opt in or opt out?
Out. And we do. We all live in the city, you have to.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, it's not, I don't know if you rent or own, so,
I mean, it just leaves,
all of us to argue with you, if y'all willing to do it to your own pocketbook, I say we go
Yeah.
with it, so.
I also look at it from the business side of things. If we do have to end up going up on the millage rate and it's only really businesses paying for it, I know some of the bigger retail and stuff like Walmart, that's not gonna get affected. But some of the smaller stuff, if they have a increased tax because of increased millage, we might be paying some of that. I don't know if they raise their prices or whatnot, but I know a small business would feel it first. You know, especially if they have brick and mortar. I know like the ones that run out of their homes and all, they would. In the big retail, they would eat it no problem. That's just one of the minor things, and that's something I don't have any facts or anything to back that up. That's just, you know, gut feeling, being a small business owner, brick and mortar. I gotta pay a lot more in taxes. I gotta make up for it somehow. Yeah, I might save money on my personal home, but having brick and mortar in the city of Loganville, he doesn't make that up.
I mean, you can see there, it's leveled off. 22, 23 is bad, but now we're at 24. You can see where it went down 6% versus 27 versus 22. I would say you got to look at your millage rate. If they wasn't reducing the millage rate, then I would say, yes, be concerned. You're going to pay a lot more. But the properties I looked at from 2003 to 2022 to 2024, it was roughly about $50 a year total. It's almost 32. So I know $50 is $50, but when you look at taxes, to me, that's not a lot. That's one dinner with your wife. But I think state made a knee-jerk reaction to the numbers, and it was too late. This is leveled off. COVID was probably blamed for everything, but I don't see a huge increase this coming up budget cycle either, as far as assessments.
Sure hope
But I don't
not.
know. We don't do the assessments, but I can tell you when I had to do my budget before I even get my assessment, so I'm just educated guess, really. I typically only put a 2% increase in a budget.
And Danny, I'll say too, that none of us want to pay more in taxes, none of us, none of y'all. We're in this together, and when I look at this, it's very complicated, and it's like the legislators checked the box, they put this out there and got what they wanted and what they needed, they checked their box and pushed it down to us, not just to us, but to us. We're in this together. And it seems a little bit half-baked. It doesn't seem like it's fully going around the circle and getting everything completed, but it's a problem they dumped on us. We've got to figure it out. And opt in, opt out, I don't know. This is very complicated. And when they present it to the public, you know, oftentimes you guys look at us and think, you know, and look at us and say, what are y'all thinking? Are y'all crazy? And the way this, you know, I look at the voters that voted in favor of this, sometimes I'm looking now like, what are you guys thinking? What did y'all vote in? But, you know, you didn't know because it wasn't presented in the right manner. It's overcomplicated, and here we all sit with this mess trying to figure it out. And it's so easy for the public to look at us and say that we dreamed this up, we brought this to the table, and that we're the ones that are trying to make some kind of a fictitious tax increase. We're not. That is not what we do up here. If anything, if we had the chance, we'd lower the taxes, but, sorry. Yeah, I know that's not gonna happen, but it would be lovely if it did. But the best we can do is just kind of maintain that millage rate every year that we can and work with the ebb and flow to keep it so that we're not going up. So again, I don't like this at all. It is half-baked to me, and it's something that we're going to have to figure out.
Yeah, Donnie, so, I mean, you know, I think the legislature was trying to fix something. You've got 159 counties in this state, 537 cities. You know, they were trying to fix a problem somewhere. I don't, you know, from the way we manage things here, I don't think we need to fix it the way they wanted to. I voted against it when I had the opportunity. Anyway, I'll certainly sit through 2 more public hearings before I make that decision, but I'm not happy with it.
They should have never painted us with the same paintbrush. We're not, every county's different, just like with Covington. They have enterprise funds that can help make it up. We're, like Brandon said, we're the bedroom community. We can't absorb that kind of a tax loss. So they painted us all with the same paintbrush, and that's very unfair.
Well, they tried to make it a one-size-fits-all, and everybody's different. And again, like I said earlier, I trust the people up here to deal with, because we're here too. Whatever we do to you, we're doing to us. And so I trust the people here more than I'm gonna trust my financial future to the state of Georgia. I mean, that's just the bottom line, you know, and I can see both sides of the coin, and I'm like Lisa, I mean, I'm troubled by it because, look, I'm just a locksmith. And then I get handed something like this, and y'all look at us to tell you, I'm just as confused as you are, and I don't understand a lot of what's going on. And so the decision that we end up making will be, I guess, as a unit, what we feel is the best for you as well as for us. And I understand that the majority of people voted for it. I just don't think that the majority of people I didn't understand what I was voting for. I mean, I'll be honest, I just, save money, sure, whatever. But now I've I went with them to the county to hear the presentation. I've talked to Danny, I've talked to our tax assessor, I've talked to other municipalities. I think everybody's in the same boat. It's something that got dumped on us, and I think it was election year for a lot of people at the Gold Dome. And they made themselves look like heroes and dropped a hot mess in our lap so that we're the fall guys. And it's going to be a tough decision either way because people are still going to be out there. And y'all are here tonight and y'all have heard it, so try to educate your neighbors.
Thank y'all for coming.
Yeah, we're going to take the blame, but we didn't write it.
It's a darned if you do and darned if
Yeah.
you don't situation. And it's, worst case scenario down the road, we get into a terrible recession and things just go south. And then if you opted in, I feel like you're going to be paying the MasterCard with American Express. You're going to be desperate trying to come up with money somewhere to fund this city and fund the city as well as cut back on services and staff. And none of us want to do that.
I got a question for those who have an answer, because I don't. If you opt in, why do you feel you would be turning your life, so to speak, over to the state?
Why do I?
Whoever.
Because they make all the decisions.
Because
We have no more say in it.
What decisions are the state, are the state?
They can
Is the state?
They can rewrite that bill at any time and add, we all have to paint our front yards purple.
They
I mean,
usually
they could change anything.
On a rewritten bill, they'll usually give you a grandfather clause. I've never actually known one that didn't, quite frankly. And you can, at that time, I mean, they're not going to force you to adopt something that wasn't in effect when you made your initial choice.
I don't trust them with that.
I would
Well,
hope not.
I worked in, I can tell you that's pretty much the general rule of thumb for laws I've dealt with.
Well, when I'm not sitting in this chair anymore and I'm out there and this is the problem, I'm gonna come in here, like somebody said, curse these people out. I'm not getting in my car and driving to the state, and besides that, it'll fall on deaf ears.
But-
And here, we live among these folks.
We want what's best for our citizens.
we do.
Not just us. And I just think, what's wrong with asking the question and getting an answer? The answer may change your mind, it may not, but I think it's an excellent question. If you think you're turning your life over to the state because if they come up with a new law, my guess is they'll repeal this entire thing. But if they come up with a new law, I'm not aware of a law that we wouldn't be grandfathered in, or they would write it in such a way they can't come in and force you to because you opted out or opted in to now do something
But if
entirely
you're- but if
different
you're
because
in
they
it-
changed it.
I know, and I'm asking you, but if you're in it forever and they go changing it, well, it isn't like new
You're in
cities
it
are coming
forever
into it.
based on the current law.
Right.
What I'm saying is they can't come in and rewrite that law to make it entirely different and then say, okay, sorry, you're in it now based on this law. They're going to have to come up with something to give you an option to opt back in or back out.
And again,
That's not the.
we're trying to look
would-
into the future and
I
think
would-
of what's going through their minds. and
I would
think-
hope that you're right.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, when they ask you to opt in or opt out, and whatever you do is from now on, that raised a red flag to me. I mean, why?
Taking
would-
all the control from the assessor's office.
Why would you want to do
I
something
don't know
from
why
now on?
they care. To me, I don't understand that now on forevermore.
Well,
part.
that's the way it's written.
It is. But I don't understand it. So I mean, I have so many questions. I wouldn't even feel comfortable voting on it.
Well, you're going to have to make an uncomfortable vote then.
Lee
Can I vote
Phillips
no on
again.
both?
Is there this, I guess, would be for Paul, is there a legal remedy that we as a principality can use to force the state to give us clarification on this issue? Is
I
there
hope
a
that was-
legal remedy to force them
I
to?
hope you asked that question in jest. Because I think, Paul, that you would have to agree, no. Tell me.
I'm not sure what the question was.
Can we force the legislator to give us clarity on this issue?
So I don't know who "we" is that we're talking about in that question.
The city, because y'all represent what I was just hearing, y'all represent the people, and so instead of having the whole population of the city address the state legislator, can y'all and the attorney that represents us, is there a legal remedy that y'all can use to save the time of the people to get clarification on the confusion that's going on about the in-out?
Lee, we had a breakfast, and one of the, as Danny said, one of the writers, or the very active in writing this bill, was at that breakfast. Patty and I were there, some others were there. He was asked direct questions. He could not answer a single one of them.
Why do we have to go along with something that they can't clarify?
There you go.
That's a good
There you go.
question, Lee.
Why do we have to do it?
Right,
Because
and
they say so.
that's what opting out is.
That's what opting out is.
That's what opting out is.
But that's what a lot of people are having problem with, is
Is
the
opting out better or
clarity
is
of
opting in
the
better?
confusion of the conversation.
We need clarification to know which one is better. We don't know enough to know at this point, at least I
I don't think they know what they wrote.
I just think they kept writing, maybe after lunch and a few drinks one day.
I mean, I think we've got it, like they're saying, it's, Covington could do very well by opting in, but we can't because we're on the residential. It's just, it was like a psyop. You see like, oh, lower taxes for life. They psyoped you. But if you really break it out and look at it, there's no one size fits all, like they said.
Right.
Opting out is the way to just reject it.
Okay, anyone else have any other comments?
Thank you for the clarity.
I hope it's a little bit.
Yeah, thank y'all for coming.
Kyle, you
This is
gonna?
I
awesome.
hope a lot of people watch this on YouTube too.
And there's 2 more of these, so.
Yeah.
Keep going, keep going.
I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Right there.
I hope so.
There you go. There's the next meetings. Thank y'all, Mayor. That's all I have, Mayor and Council. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Danny.
Could we have a motion to close this public hearing?
We do.
Okay, I have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? This public hearing is
I just have a
Patty.
few.
Me.
Yeah,
Lisa.
I had like 4 or 5.
Did Lisa?
here
I
at
didn't
one
see who said
point.
it.
I think people
Yeah,
that
what
sit
we
here-
share with
Yeah.
DDA and, you know.
I think they walk off.
We've made a motion and